But all the other candidates, now what we've done is we've put them in alpha order because we wanted to give them all a chance to just go ahead and make their opening statements in that kind of order rather than pairing them by race. I've already told you how they are paired up by race, by place on the ballot. And so we want to make sure that they all have an opportunity to answer the questions. Now, I don't know, Mr. Clark or Mr. Maynard may not have a question for each one of you. They may have a question that is specific to you based on something that you've already released as being a reason that you're running for office. If that's the case, they have the latitude to do that. So you may use your closing statement at the end to rebut something or to bring up a new topic. Your closing statement is how you close the deal with the voters. And remember that you're talking to more people than the people in this room, because our website during elections gets a lot of activity. People go in, those videos are highly watched in Smith County. So just remember that, so that you can close the deal with the voters that you intend to reach. Thank you so much, and thank you for those who are here this evening. Now, Mr. Maynard, since you are our guest, we will let you ask the first question. Oh, no, we've got to do the opening statement. So, all right, so Dardine, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Let me just remind you, this will be about 15 seconds left. The yellow sign, the red side, stop.
Okay. Mr. Bruner, it's your turn to start.
My name is Anthony Bruner. I live in the northwest corner of Smith County, position 2 of ESD2, very rural area of our county. I served 38 years in public education, 10 years at Alva Golden as a 5th grade teacher and school bus driver and elementary principal. I then went to Raines ISD as transportation director and served there for 11 years. Then I made my way to Brownsboro Independent School District, where I was hired first as a junior high assistant principal. A year later, I was the elementary principal, where I served for 8 years, and then the technology director for the rest of my 25 years. I am very familiar with bidding procedures and feel like I also know quite a bit about long-range planning. When I went to Raines ISD, they had 26 bus routes, and they were in terrible condition. They were only buying 2 buses a year. How do you deal with that? I did. I won't go into details, but I'm here to represent the taxpayers in the rural part of ESD2. Approximately 1/3 of Smith County is in my district. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to go to Paul Perryman. Mr. Perryman, we're going to do that because, as I've already mentioned, Charles Wilson, who is the candidate in place 2, that Mr. Bruner just spoke in as the write-in candidate, is not here. Neither is your opponent, Ms. Sandy Haley, so we're going to let you go ahead and make your statement because you're in place 1.
Okay. Well, I'm Paul Perryman. I'm a lifelong resident of Smith County. I worked for UPS in the Tyler office for 10 years. I had a car lot on Highway 155 South in the district that I'm running for 9 years at the end of this year. In one sentence, I'm running because I want to be a wise steward of taxpayer dollars. It's really that simple. And every time I'm presented with a question in a budget situation, I'm going to look at it from that angle. Are we going to be a wise steward of the taxpayers' dollars? I'd like to see that move forward. I'd like to see the debt paid off as fast as possible and operate on a pay-as-you-go policy. I'd like to city of Tyler's done. There have been a lot of improvements made in a lot of these fire districts. I don't know that all of them have been remodeled, all 11, but most of them have been remodeled. A couple of them are, within the last 3 years, been rebuilt. So there's been a lot of improvements made, and they were needed. But we need to get over to pay-as-you-go as fast as possible. Once the debt's paid off, I'd like to lower the tax rate from the present 8.46 to match the Lindale ESD1 to 6.0. That's what Lindale's operating off of. They're doing fine. After we get our debt paid off, I feel like that's something we could do. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Perryman. Now we're going to move to place 4, and those candidates are Robert Deere and Randy Melton. Mr. Melton is the current president of ESD2, and Mr. Deere is a board member there. They both were appointed. So we're going to start in alphabetical order with Mr. Deere, and then when we do the closing statements, we'll do reverse order on that, if you gentlemen will help me remember in case I forget. Mr. Deere.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your life to show up and make this possible for us. It's a pleasure to see that people are interested. My name is Robert Deere. I'm running for Smith County Emergency Service District Place 4, and I'm here to try to earn your support. And I know that I can be a good steward of your money. If I'm elected, I'll make a promise to you right now that I will always use conservative principles when making a vote to spend your money. I know my viewpoints, and I know the firefighters' viewpoints, and I know pretty well everybody's viewpoints, but the viewpoint I don't know is you, the public, and that's what I'm after the most. I've set up a web page, and if you'll go to it, you'll communicate with me, and I'll communicate with you. But I need to hear from you about how you want us to spend your money. We don't have a problem figuring it out, but we'd like to do it your way for a change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Melton.
I do thank you for extending the invitation and listening to our candidates. That way you can judge the similarities and also judge the differences in the candidacy. Again, my name is Randall Melton. I am working, current board president now, been appointed, been on the board about 2 years. I was appointed by the Smith County Commissioners Court. For them, I was the first one that was appointed. Once they set up the, I guess the Citizens Committee, the ones made up of some elected officials, I was the first candidate appointed by that committee. There's been 2 others appointed by that committee, served on the board. I'm a lifelong resident of Smith County. I've lived in the White House ISD school district for 31 years. Married to my wife Nelda for 32 years. I'm the father of 3 children. John, who is a minister in the Fort Worth area. My daughter Laurie is a public school teacher in the White House school district. My son Ross is a Dallas firefighter. He formerly was a volunteer firefighter from that. I'm employed as the Director of Campus Police and Security at a local community college here in Texas. Also an adjunct professor at the local junior college. Graduated John Tyler High School many years ago. I hold an associate's degree from Tyler Junior College, associate's arts degree, and a bachelor of science degree in criminal justice from Texas Eastern University. You remember that is now UT Tyler. I have a master of science degree from UT Tyler in the areas of criminal justice and public administration for that. Graduate East Texas Police Academy, graduate of the American Institute of Applied Science. I'm a retired employee of the city of Tyler. Spent 21 years, best years of my life at the Tyler Police Department. I've been 38 years as a public servant in here. I believe in open government. I believe in fiscal responsibility and accountability and strong ethics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. Now, to wrap up the opening statements, we will have Dr. Ted Gold will go first, and then he'll be followed by Matt Thiessen.
As printed on the ballot, my name is Theodore Ted Gould, G-O-U-L-D. I've gone by Ted all my life. Theodore, I usually reserve for dealings with the IRS. I appreciate your invitation to be here tonight for this job interview. And as you know, I'm running for election to the ESD board, ESD2 board, as a representative of the taxpayers of District 5, district I live in. By way of background, my wife and I were recruited to Tyler in 1984 from Athens, Georgia. And it was by a firm in Dallas that was at the time staffing emergency departments, both ETMC and Mother Francis, same company. Since that time, I've had the opportunity to serve in a number of volunteer executive positions in the healthcare world in Tyler, including Vice President of Smith County Medical Society, President of the Medical Staff of Trinity Mother Francis Hospital, which is an elected position, and also affiliate faculty with the EMS program at Tyler Junior College. I've also been appointed Chief of Staff at UT Health Center Tyler, currently known as UT Health Northeast, as well as Associate Professor of Medicine and Medical Director of their emergency room. Overall, I've had, in 30 years of emergency medicine in Tyler, I think a lot of success, and I've been very grateful for that. And the reason I'm here is to contribute much more of my time and energies to our community. Thank you.
Mr. Thiessen.
Good evening. My name is Matt Thiessen. I'm running for the 5th District, seat number 2 of the ESD number 2 board. As of October 21st, my lovely wife, Amy, over there, and I have been happily married for 14 years. During that time, we've stayed busy raising 4 children, Michael, Aaron, Noah, and Chloe. We're active members of Good Shepherd Church, and our children even attend the school there. It's a very good school, by the way. 7 years ago, after working long, difficult, and sporadic hours in the oil field, I was desperate for a change of pace and purpose. I took a big leap of faith, purchased a small lawn route, and started a long and exciting path that has carried me and my family to where we are today. This spring, I merged my company with a close friend of mine. We renamed our combined company Clear Choice Lawn Care. We now operate an operation with 33 full-time employees. We have 5 different lawn trucks with, of course, their respective crews. We have 2 different irrigation trucks. We also have a lot sweeping crew. We not only operate in headquarters out of Tyler, Texas, but we have operations that are based out of Garland, operations that are based out of North Richland Hills, and we subcontract work all the way down to Houston, Texas, which will probably be the next place we do an office. All the good times, we're crazy busy right now. All that's to say, every single day, I'm responsible for managing logistical issues that arise daily from these type of operations. I also pay the bills, I meet the payroll, I create the budget, and then I keep us within our budget. All of these things that are going to be, I find handy, I believe, in this future position. Other responsibilities include the oversight and directing of 3 operations managers. Every day I work to raise the bar of service while lowering the cost of operations. This is the same thing that I'm seeking to do as board member of ESD number 2. I'm asking for your vote in the general election because I want to put my hard-earned experience to good use.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Maynard, would you like to kick off the questioning, please?
I know several have touched on this, but just real specifically, I'd like to hear from each of you on your experience with budgets and, if any, particularly with public budgets. And we'll start with Mr. Bruner.
I've dealt with budgets in education all 38 years in my educational career. But at Raines ISD, I really got involved with budgets dealing with transportation, the school buses, purchasing of buses, learned a great deal about bidding procedures, came up with a way to extend the life of the buses that we had by going to the prison and having them completely reworked and reconditioned. At Brownsboro ISD as technology director, I work extensively with budgets, purchasing of computers, training of teachers, and long-range planning and goal setting.
I've pretty well been a foot soldier all my life. I haven't really got into the budget too much until the last 2 years, and I didn't want to then, but after our president was forced out, Mr. Bateman, then I didn't have any help, anybody to lean on, so I immediately dug into the budget and took a crash course for about 1.5 years self-taught, and I understand it pretty well, and I wouldn't have any problem at all creating a budget for the ESD.
Mr. Gould?
Dr. Gould.
As my father once said to me, he said, don't call yourself Dr. Gould because you weren't born with that name. And he was a wise man. I don't have actual experience with public budget as much as direct impact on the budget of primarily Mother Frances Hospital, to a lesser extent UT Health Northeast. Mother Frances Hospital, I was the medical director of emergency, and we were busy with 60,000 visits a year, and I was responsible ultimately for the quality of care and the outcome of those visits. And administration, I worked very closely together to reach a budget that was workable and acceptable to the administration of Mother Frances.
Mr. Milton.
As department head at the local junior college, I am a budget manager. My budget is over $1 million. I've been a budget manager of my department now for 17 years. I have great example, great budget controls at the college. I have great experience watching the budget process of the budget of the college. Prior to that, as a supervisor within the city of Tyler, I saw great leadership as far as budget controls. I believe in pay-as-you-go. We have not increased our budget in 2 years. We have not increased our debt in the 2 years I have been on the board. We're on a pay-as-you-go basis. That's what I intend to stay as long as I'm on the board. A pay-as-you-go basis and not go into further debt and to pay off the existing debt.
Mr. Perryman.
I haven't had a car lot for 9 years. Has taught me a lot about budgets, and any business that made it through the crash of '09 and survived, I have a lot of respect for them. In the car business, we saw a lot of even new car franchises go under during that time period. I was able to come through that. My car lot is debt-free. I bought, paid for, and built a brand new house on Lake Palestine, debt-free. I really like the way the city of Tyler is operating on pay-as-you-go, but put some money aside with a half cent makes sense. There is some reserves right now in ESD2, 1.5 million. I think that's good if we're going to give toward pay-as-you-go, and I want as quickly as possible pay off the debt and then stay debt-free.
Mr. Thiessen.
I do not have any experience with public budgets. I do, however, have experience with private budgets, obviously, in my business. Our operations deal with over $1.5 million a year of revenue. We've gotten there pretty quickly and learned a lot of lessons along the way. While I haven't managed other people's money, I have been a stringent manager of our own money, and coming into a partnership, into a new company, over the past 4 months, that's been my primary duties, assessing where we're at, because prior to me being on board, there was no budget in the other operation. So I'm constantly crunching numbers, constantly evaluating where we're at, constantly evaluating where we're going. I've done new equipment purchase, used equipment purchase. I've done all the math to see which way that works. And so budgeting is something I do every single day.
Ms. Fleming, I need to take
Matt, would you please take over for Darlene? Thank you. All right, so Ernie,
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. My question is going to be very specific about the ESD operation. I've been very familiar with it over the past few years. I worked over there for almost a year, looking at budgets, looking at analysis and stuff. My first question is, describe your understanding of the contractual arrangements between Smith County's Emergency Service District 2 and Cherokee County to provide emergency service to parts of Cherokee County. Do you agree with this arrangement? And if so, why or why not? We'll start with Mr. Bruner.
I'm aware of the questions and problems with Cherokee County. I am also aware that arrangements very similar are with Wood and Rains County and Mineola and Van School District. Where I come from, debt and personal responsibility go hand in hand. If I am receiving services from outside the county, I expect that I pay my pro rata share for those services. I feel like in Wood and Van Zandt County that those services are being paid for, but I also will work to improve their service.
I think there's a misunderstanding here because currently there is no contract between ESD2 and Cherokee County. The contracts are between Troop and Cherokee County and Bullard and Cherokee County. I brought this up at a meeting and asked our auditors recommended that we go with a contract between ESD2 and Cherokee County. But up to this point, it's still left with Cherokee, Troop and Bullard. So we're at a stalemate with this, and it should be corrected immediately.
Let me make sure I understand that the current board, through Troop ESD, provides services to them and that the ESD2 board is not involved in that process. Is that correct?
We're not involved as far as signing the contract. We are supposed to approve all contracts between any volunteer fire department and another entity. So I guess by our silence, we're showing our approval for it. So
We'll move on. I just want to make sure I understood. Dr. Gould, you have a... I did have the opportunity to interview at length the chief of the Bullard Volunteer Fire Department, and we discussed this issue about Cherokee County calls, and he gave me some statistics, some costs, and I'm not clear as to any contract details between Cherokee County and Bullard Fire Department, but that's something that really needs to be ironed out. I think equity of cost factor based on call volume and cost to the fire department is very important. Thank you. Mr. Melton?
Would you repeat the last part of your question?
It was my understanding there was a contract between the ESD board and Cherokee County to provide services there through one of the local volunteer fire departments. What I hear tonight, that is not correct. It's being done by just one of the fire departments. But they're using Smith County taxpayer dollars, I guess is a question. And please correct me, since you are the president of the board, what that is, that arrangement is and how it works.
There is no contract directly between ESD number 2 and Cherokee County themselves. The two contracts, one is from Bullard VFD to Cherokee County, the other is Troop VFD to Cherokee County. As our ESD, we contract with both Bullard VFD and Troop VFD. Cherokee reimburses those departments about $55,000. Those departments in turn reimburse ESD number 2. That is happening now for that. When Bullard goes in Cherokee County, their fuel replenishment is not charged to Smith County taxpayers. It comes out of a different credit. The money we're getting from Cherokee County is actually more than we paid the volunteer fire departments of Van and Mineola for that. We're getting some free labor from our departments from Bullard and Troop, because a number of the firefighters from those departments live in Cherokee County for that. The board just voted to bill in Cherokee County for fire rescue services, and we selected the billing firm. And this month in our meeting, we will finalize that as far as coming up with actual numbers that will actually charge. But we intend to bill when we run down in the Cherokee County.
Okay, clear that for me. You're going to build a building in Cherokee County, is that correct, with Smith County taxpayers' money? Is that correct?
No, I'm not talking about a building. I'm talking about building,
building
for response, for the accidents and for the fires.
Has anybody,
we will build the homeowners.
Yeah, have y'all done any kind of analysis of what that cost is to the volunteer fire department? When you talk about free labor, these are volunteers. This is how this all started, volunteer fire department, so I wouldn't call it free labor. They volunteered to come do that.
We have tried to do several analysis of what was the actual cost, and using some FEMA firms, FEMA figures from the Texas Forest Service, and it could be about $225 a call, but it could vary with the type of call that you have, in from $25 to say $1,700 a call.
Okay, we just need to move on. I'm glad y'all clarified that up, that the board does not have a contract, but we are using taxpayer money to go there. We just don't know whether we're getting the buck for the dollar.
Okay, listen sharp, people. In 2011, in 2012, and 2013, Smith County spent $425,115 on services provided to Cherokee County residents, but we were only reimbursed, the exact number is $55,700. We never got reimbursed for $325,000, people.
And let me stop you a minute. Where are you getting that information?
I asked Mr. Deere to pull the numbers for those years, 2011, 2012, 2013,
okay,
from ESD2, showing exactly how much money we spent going down there.
Let me go back and clarify one thing. We talked about 2 fire departments serving Cherokee County. Is each fire department getting $55,000, or is it a combination of $55,000?
Combination, as I understand it, net total, what we've been reimbursed from, now listen to this. The net total, what we've spent, $425,115 to the penny. The net total we've been reimbursed, $55,770. So let's just round off, $425,000 what we spent, $55,000 what we got back. Now I want to finish one comment here and I'll be done. I want to end the practice of using taxpayer dollars to provide services to Cherokee County and other areas until a legal agreement is provided that our county attorney works out with their county attorney. After a legal agreement is signed and we're going to be reimbursed, that's fine, but not until. The taxpayers of Smith County should not be on the hook or provide welfare for the surrounding counties.
Mr. Melton, can I ask you a follow-up question? Has a policy changed where all contracts by the various volunteer fire departments that involve tax dollars has to be approved by the board? Is that still in effect?
If you're saying, are you asking the question that a contract from a VFD to another entity has to be approved by our board? I'm not aware of that policy.
Okay, but are you aware that that board is spending taxpayer money to provide that service to that entity? It looks like to me you would want to review the contract, because if I recall, the legislation says that that's the authority you have. But I don't want to get in, I just want to clarify the point. Mr. Tyson, go ahead.
Thank you. To be quite honest, this has obviously been covered quite a lot. I too had the same information that Mr. Perryman had, and I hold the same view. This is something that needs to stop. It needs to stop right away. I don't believe it was ever properly authorized, and since it is taxpayer money, it absolutely should be subject to the board's authority and board's approval.
Okay, we're going to go in reverse order here. Mr. Teason, you're first, okay? If elected, what performance standards would you recommend in order to evaluate measurable results for the district? And let me define that. that is value, measurable value for tax dollars expended.
There's an old expression, what gets measured gets managed. I'm a big believer in measuring things. There's a whole variety of data points to measure. To be quite honest, from talking with Mr. Deere privately prior to this, I know that a lot has already been measured. A lot of that data is some of the data that I too have studied and Mr. Perryman here has mentioned. As far as standards, the first task I would undertake is quite honestly assessing where we're at. Looking at it from the outside in, there's not going to be a lot that I'm going to bring to the table other than what I've heard kind of third party. So once elected, I would begin becoming a student of current affairs. I would issue reports, update our website that is seriously behind right now, get all those things up and going, and then from there we would be able to measure whether we were tracking in the right direction, wrong direction, and we could begin righting the ship.
Mr. Perryman.
Okay, one thing right off the bat we can do that school districts are already doing. I think TJC is doing this, Mr. Melton, if I'm incorrect on TJC, you can correct me on that. But one thing I'd like to see is that the check registry, let me look at my notes here. Yeah, make it more transparent by posting the ESD2 check registry online. Okay? If you're afraid to post what you wrote a check for and you're using taxpayer dollars, there's a problem. It's real simple, people. It's not hard. Post the check registry online. Your school districts do it. I'm pretty sure TJC does it. It's real simple.
Yes,
And I want to see
Mr.
payers
Perryman.
go.
And I like to always give our taxing entities credit where credit is due. TJC has done a magnificent job of putting more than most entities do online, and we're very, very proud of them for that. Okay, Mr. Melton.
First, let me say that we, as a number of our board members, do not like our website. We went with a low bid at the time. And the individual that's over the site has been unresponsive. What we intend to do to address this in our budget, we budgeted for an IT person to come on board with the budget to take care of changing the website where it is more responsive. Obviously, things such as check registers are published. We've had an issue with the provider, and it's time to go to a new website. But the IT person will change that website and get there. That is our goal at this time. If I'm still there, our main direction I want to go is fire prevention and fire protection, fire education. I want to improve response times if I can. Continue on our desire to improve the ISO ratings, which translates into lower insurance premiums for the residents of the county, and also concentrate on professionalism of each of the volunteers, and also increase training for each member.
Okay, and Ms. Radel, I need to do a redirect with Mr. Melton very quickly here. Mr. Melton, would you clarify a point on hiring an IT person? Is this going to be an IT professional to do the website, or someone that you're contracting to do a short-term project, or is this ongoing, or are they a full-time employee?
This will be a full-time position. It has to do with not only as a webmaster, but also take care of our 11 departments. We have a software called Firehouse, and we're spending a lot of money outside for that. We believe we can save money by having our own internal person to take care of each department. We have 17 substations, and the Firehouse Firehouse software is also on board our fire engines. So we need an on-site person. We believe we can save money that way.
Okay, well, just one more quick question then about that. So whenever you all went about to procure an IT employee for the district, did you all did you have written specifications for that position, and how did you all go about hiring an IT professional, did you put specifications out and ask for qualifications and proposals, or just step me through very quickly?
We have not hired somebody. We have not completed the job description.
Oh, I see.
And so we have not gone through the hiring process.
Oh, okay, I see.
But
Thank you.
from the board, our intention is to hire a full-time IT person.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Thank you for that qualification. Okay, then, Mr. Gold, Dr. Gold, please.
Thank you. In terms of value added to the taxpayer, one of the most important things is transparency of costs and money spent. The greatest added value to the taxpayer is really intangible in that it's the lives saved, property saved. Very difficult to put a dollar figure on that kind of effort and work, if you will.
Thank you. Mr. Deere.
It is hard to measure the value. But one of the most important tools I've discovered here lately, and I didn't bring my charts with me, I'll just do it off the top of my head. I did a 19-month study on all fire departments, what it costs for each run, average cost per run. And the bottom, I think, around $450 a run, and your top department's something up to $950 a run. I think that's a great disparity, and I think we ought to get all those numbers down. I'm saying in the $350 a run range. And, the Cherokee County run range was $702 per run. That was the average between those two departments. So if you look at it from that perspective, you can measure it in money terms. You can never measure property loss and value saved or
Okay, well, a clarification, Mr. Deere. It seems that I remember that the fire marshal office compiles records on property loss in the county. So, am I correct on that there actually is a reporting by the fire marshal's office, and the fire marshal's office, if I'm not mistaken, compiles that information from the fire departments?
They should have that, the Tyler Fire Department, we had that, but I've never seen it from the Smith County Fire Marshal's office, so I can't comment on that.
I'm pretty sure that it exists. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruner.
I think one of the keys to the budgeting and accountability is long-range planning, and then detailed budgeting to support that long-range plan. Be sure that we have the equipment available. And by now, after having spent $24 million plus in the last 6 years, our fire departments, although they're called volunteers, they should be fairly well equipped to where we could start looking at not having to purchase 2 or 3 fire trucks a year at a cost of $500,000 plus each year. I will be very diligent in seeing where the revenue comes from and the resources that are available and utilized in each district, and would hope to see that published along with the check registers.
Thank you.
Ms. Fleming, if I might ask for a little bit of extra time for the response to this next question. It's a 3-parter, and I apologize in advance. Just by a show of hands, did you vote in 2007 in the ESD election that created it? Were you here voting when it?
I voted in the election.
Okay.
But I did not vote for it.
Okay. I want to cast your minds back to 2007. I want to talk about.
I need to clarify one question. Yes. You're asking if we voted in that election cycle?
In the election?
Yes.
Okay. When the ESD was presented to the voters, I want to talk about 3 specific things that we were told as voters were going to come of this. The first would be lower home insurance rates due to better ISO ratings. The second thing we were told was that the tax rate would be 5 cents per $100 of property valuation. The third point was that the money would be apportioned by department according to how much, let's say in Red Springs, how much those Red Springs folks put in, that much money would come back to their department. As far as I know, none of those three things have taken place. Can I ask each of you to talk about those promises and what we can do going forward to make those things happen? And we'll begin with Mr. Bruner.
So I'll give you 2 minutes, for 3 minutes for response, okay, great.
I'm very aware of those promises, but I'll tell you in ESD2 position 2, the ISO rating is either a 9 or a 10 for my district. There are 2 volunteer fire departments in my district. I have been trying to find out through the appraisal district just what the ESD revenue for position 2 was, and at the present time, they're not able to give me that number. They can give me the total for ESD 2. I would expect that those 2 fire departments, Red Springs and Winona, they serve a very rural area, and they may not be generating as much revenue as the southern part of the county. But the purpose of government is to provide equal protection, equal opportunity. We might have to rely upon these districts helping out in kind with either services, equipment, but at the same time, I do not expect that these districts would receive 1/11 of the total revenue for ESD2. We have to examine what is available for service, the distances, the equipment needed, the roads. The area that I live in 2007, Lindale did not want that area because they said they would have to travel so far to get there that it would be impractical and was unserviceable, that they had to rely upon Mineola or Van or Grand Sling Fire Department to service us. They have done a great job. They're paid $15,000 a year. I've talked with the Mineola Fire Marshal. He said they are more than pleased with the present arrangement. But he also goes in and serves ESD1, backs them up. In 2011, they actually sent 2 trucks, the forestry bulldozer and plow, and a tanker truck into position 4 between Tyler and Kilgore for 74 hours, just because they were good neighbors and there was a need and they had the equipment and it wasn't available here in Smith County to the volunteer fire departments. I'm proud that they did that. I'm disappointed that Gladewater last month declined to even talk about a in-kind service arrangement with the ESD2. If I am elected, I hope to approach those people.
It'll be hard to come up to standards with there. With regards to the 5.5 cents, which was, I think it was 5.5 that they represented to the public before they voted, 5 or 5.5. They did present that to the voters at 5.5%. But before they even got started, I read in the minutes, there was a board member made a motion to open it up at 5.5%. Well, they didn't receive a second. And then somebody made a motion to open it at 0.8468 or something like that. And then they voted and approved and passed that. Okay, and I thought that was rather a shoddy deal there, representing yourself one way and coming back another, but yeah, that's history. With regards to the dividing of the funds between the departments, it was written in the paper that they would divide the money up according to the proportion that they got, that they generated in their district. Well, that never happened from day one. I don't think it's happened to now. Somewhere down the line, the fire chiefs got together and signed a contract between themselves, although it wasn't binding on the board, that they would split the money equally. So they did that for 2 or 3 years, I'm pretty sure. And that's the way that came about. And as far as the ISO insurance rating, I really have mixed feelings on that. It's true that the better ISO rating you get, the more money you save on insurance policies. But if you have to spend $30 million to get that, instead of paying the insurance companies, you're paying the firefighter. So I don't know if there's any quantifiable way you can say that. They save $50 million on insurance while spending $30 million. I'd like to see that. I don't know.
Just a brief note, in 2006, my wife decided after 24 years in Tyler that we should move north, as we're both from Canada originally. 6 months in Michigan, she decided, after our granddaughter visited, who lives here in Tyler, that we're moving back to Tyler as fast as we can. And when I got back, the ESD number 2 was formed, and monies were collected and monies were being spent. My insurance agent tells me that insurance on my house is definitely lower over the last 3 or 4 years because of the efforts of the ESD and the improvement of the ISO rating that was not desirable before that. As far as the 5 cents or 5.5 cents, it's difficult when somebody suggests that off the top. They have to have a clear understanding what the budget's all about and what the costs are going to be to provide, excellent service and what goes with safety for the firefighters, training and all of that. So it's a matter of where that number came from in advance of the election. Was it a well worked out number in terms of tax rate or not? I didn't quite catch the Red Springs question you had.
How the money is apportioned?
To Red Springs or overall?
Per department.
Oh, I see. Well, as my understanding is, each chief meets annually with Mr. Chief Roselle, who's the chief appointed by the ESD board, and they work out a budget, essentially. I asked the 2 chiefs in my district, how is the ESD budget, how it will impact you this coming year? And they said they thought it was fair, and it's a case of, what you want as opposed to what you really need. So it's a matter of being realistic about it, as I see it.
I will say that in that election, I did proudly vote for the creation of the ESD. I do not remember the 5 or 5.5 cents, that part of it, but I did vote, and I definitely support the Emergency Services District. About half of our budget goes to reimburse the VFDs for expenses, daytime staffing, fuel direct costs, things like that. Remaining funds of ESD funds are spent for major capital assets, purchases, fire trucks, debt service, tax collection, administrative services, communication, buying personal protection gear. We operate as a countywide agency for that, not just an individual type department. When a fire call, structure call comes into the ESD, it's not one fire department responding. It's called a box call or a bracket call. 3 departments respond simultaneously. That's what's called countywide fire protection. So when you look at the budget and what fire support goes to individual areas, whether it's generate lower revenue or have a higher revenue coming into the district, they each get the same type of coverage. When calls are responded, we've got the departments coming. Multiple departments are responding to the call.
Mr. Perryman. Okay, on the ISO, all I can tell you is my personal house insurance has gone up incrementally the last 3 years, and I haven't done any improvements or built any other structures. So all I can tell you is my bill's gone up, it hasn't gone down, I can guarantee that. On the 5 cents per 100, I would just be thrilled if we could get it back down to what was taken to the people and said this is what it's going to be. Lindale, like I said in the opening comments, Lindale is charging 6 cents per 100, and your present rate, and if you live in ESD2, is 8.46 per 100. I'd like to see it drop back down to 6 cents. I don't know if that's immediately feasible. We've got to get this $3 million debt paid off. But once that debt's paid off, it's definitely feasible. And so that's part of being a good steward.
Mr. Thiessen.
I'd like to comment kind of in general. I was not aware of these promises that were made. I did not vote relative to this election. I wasn't aware that this even happened until a couple of years ago when I became aware of this. I think this is overall indicative of a problem that we have on a national scale and obviously on a local scale. That is that we get sold a set of goods, and then when they arrive, they're not what they were supposed to be. I think the way we fix this problem is through transparency. I think the way we fix this problem is by electing people to this office rather than appointing. And I think that that is going to create a lot more accountability. And I think that's the only way we're going to fix things like this. I know I, as a business person, don't get away with promising one thing and delivering another. And that's in essence what you just described is going on here. Rather than tell you, you know, what I think about it, obviously I think it's horrible. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm in this race is because I don't like what I see going on, and I feel like the only way that I can do something about it is by getting involved in it. This seemed like a great opportunity to do that. So I plan on making this all available. Anytime we have minutes, anytime we have meetings, I think there should be a summary of the minutes that's posted. Another issue that we have with this in general is just the fact that the vast majority of the public have no idea that this exists, let alone its relevance, let alone that we're talking about setting tax code and literally spending their money. So I think all this goes hand in hand with needing to communicate, needing to do it transparently, and needing to do it often to get the public engaged.
I'd like for each one of you to answer this to the best you can and as briefly as you can, but several audits and analysis of the ESD2 operations have been conducted over the past several years, in fact, since the beginning, with many recommendations for improvement. However, these recommendations have largely been ignored. Will you review these recommendations and pledge tonight that all recommended improvements will be given serious consideration in a public workshop meeting? Is the question clear?
Can you just state it again?
Okay. In plain English, real quick. Over the years, since the ESD has started, there have been a number of audits and analysis made of the operations. I think somebody goes,
Who made the audit? County?
CPAs have made them. I did 2 of them. I know 2 other people who have done them over the years. Okay, there are a number of recommendations in that are for improvements. We're not asking you to make the improvements. We're asking you tonight, will you pledge to find those audits and analysis and pledge that those recommendations will be given serious consideration in a public workshop meeting that is advertised to the public. Because I think you've heard several members here tonight say that they're not sure the public understands what ESD2 is doing. So I'll start with Mr. Bruner.
I would be very interested in seeing these recommendations. I know that there has to be a way to get things under control, and I will be working to that end. I would also say that I would hope that the public and community would would start attending the meetings. I attended my first meeting this month, last week or week before last. There were 3 at-large public people there for the meeting, and there was probably 55 or 60 fire marshals and volunteer firemen. And it seemed like there were a lot of questions raised, differences in fire trucks and the bid prices on these.
Okay.
They need to be considered.
Okay,
We've
please.
got to standardize.
Yeah. The question is, would you pledge to the public to have a workshop if y'all can find these audits and analysis?
Yes.
Mr. Deere?
Yes.
I've read and I'm aware of most of the recommendations that's been made from the audits. And that's one of the good things I can say. We have abided by most of them. Off the top of my head, the only one I can think of we're not abiding by currently is they recommended the contract between Cherokee County and ESD2 be made that way and not come through the other 2 departments through your employees.
I assume you're talking about financial audits. I'm talking about both financial and operational audits. Dr. Gould?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Milton?
Short answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
Now, last 2 years I've been on the board. I can't address anything before I was on the board, for 13 and 14. We addressed the audit. We publicly addressed each audit deficiency. Debit card use, they wanted job descriptions of our employees, tighten up our reimbursement controls, undocumented reimbursement, things like that, some internal controls. We have publicly done it. Since I've been on the board 2 years, we sit and it took a while to go through each and every, what we call the audit deficiencies. So the answer is yes, it would be publicly done. It has been done since I've been there, and I'll pledge to continue that.
Thank you. Did you also get a management letter with the audit? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Perryman?
And those also obviously public information.
Okay, that's right.
Yes, and
Okay, thank you.
word. And that's one reason I want to see the check registry online, so people can see where's the money being spent.
Okay. Yeah, most of y'all are referring to a financial audit, and I understand that. There's several operational audits that have been done. I know by 2 other people and myself over the last 5 years. And I don't know too much has ever been done with those. That's what I'm asking. Mr. Tyson?
Yes, I will look over the audits, both operational and financial.
Thank you.
Okay, what would be a good question? Who should be in charge of writing bid specifications? First of all, who should be in charge of writing bid specs, approving bid specifications, setting bid evaluation criteria, opening and awarding bids for Emergency Services District 2? Mr. Teason.
I believe that should be the primary function of the board, because we're talking about management of money and setting a tax code. The 2 go hand in hand. You can't just set the code unless you also have control over what's being bid upon, the criteria, everything you just listed. So I absolutely believe it should be part of primarily the board's duty to do that. And I don't believe it should be the board's duty that is delegated to one individual. I do believe it should be the board's duty as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruner?
It should definitely be the board, but the board should be working with the fire departments, the fire chiefs, as these specifications are written, to ensure that if there's any specialized needs, they are addressed, but is it a need and not a want? A Chevrolet will do the job. We don't need to be buying a Cadillac or a Rolls Royce.
Thank you. Mr. Perryman?
I think the board, because, I mean, that's the whole idea of an elected official. If you don't like how they vote, then you can work against their election next time. The whole reason we're having this election the first time is because our state senator, Kevin Eltop, and our state representative, Matt Schaefer, they didn't co-sponsor, they authored this bill. If they didn't see some problems, they wouldn't have done that. It's real simple.
Thank you. Mr. Deere?
I also think it should be the board too, but not the entire board, mainly because of the open meetings problem. So the two knowledgeable board members get together, start the process, finalize it, and present it to the board whether they're okay, and take it from there. Get some standardization in this process also.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
I'm gonna differ. I think the ones that should write the bids, write the specs, evaluate them, summarize, should be the director of operations. Then it should come to the board. But as the director of operations, his expertise, you need to listen to these specs as the bids meet the specs. Okay, and we heard an analysis between the Cadillac and Chevrolet version. What we need, what we want. You know, what's the wants versus need. But I think it should be the director of operations first. But all that information is presented to the board for the board to decide. Okay? For some of us that are lay folks on fire engines, there's lots of technical information that goes through there. We need somebody with expertise to present it to us. That way we can evaluate it and make some informed decisions.
Thank you. Dr. Gold?
Bid specifications, in my mind, need to be created by experts. Overall, when it's the responsibility of the board financially to account for the expenditures, then the board needs to review, and in terms of letting bids and approving bids, I think the board is the body that's responsible. Bid specifications, on the other hand, really should be developed by experts in the field, and I'm sure there's precedence elsewhere for any type of equipment and or needs of firefighters.
Thank you so much.
Fixed assets such as firefighter vehicles, capital equipment, and buildings have been purchased with taxpayer dollars, but titled in the name of the individual fire department that are contracted with the district. Do you believe this is legal? And if so, describe how the Board of Commissioners can guarantee fire service will be provided to the citizens should a fire department decide it will no longer contract with ESD2 to operate that service. Okay. Under the legislation that created ESD2, you are responsible as an ESD board to provide fire service to the ESD districts. That's pretty clear in the legislation. You contract with volunteer fire departments. Should a volunteer fire department refuse to sign a contract with you, how would you provide the fire service to that area if they own the equipment that's been bought with taxpayer dollars and built? That's the question.
Who's that directed to?
Mr. Thiessen over there, just walk.
No, I do not believe it should be in the name of the individual fire department. That's not who bought it. It wasn't through their voluntary donations. It was through taxpayer dollars, and therefore it belongs to Smith County. You bring up the excellent point, is if they were to decide not to renew the contract, we would be left holding the bag, paying the payment, however you want to say it, with nothing to show for it. So no, I don't think that's a wise idea.
Thank you. Mr. Perryman?
Yes, the county needs to own it. It's collected from county dollars. The county needs to own it.
No, number one, the ESD is a legal subdivision of the state of Texas, just like the county. The county, only responsibility the county originally had was to appoint the members of the ESD board. They had no other authority over you. You're a taxing entity. You're responsible to the taxpayers for the tax rate you set, for how you spend the taxpayers' money. And the question I'm asking is if over a period of time, as this equipment is purchased, as my understanding, is still being titled to the ESD district that the equipment is going to go to, and the buildings, I understand, are in the names of the district. should that district fail to contract with you for fire services, how would you provide fire services? You don't own any equipment, firefighting engines or buildings? That's my question.
Well, that presentation needed, going forward, it need to be something that's looked at, and the equipment purchase being the name of ESD2. If the money provided comes from ESD's taxation.
Good question. Thank you. Mr. Milton?
Since I've been on board, all expenditures for equipment, fire trucks, engines are titled to the ESD2.
Good. Thank you.
That means they belong to us.
Good.
If that fire department goes out of existence, if we no longer sign a contract with them, we'll just split to the other 11 departments. We will provide fire service to that area.
Thank you. Glad to hear of that change. Dr. Gould?
My understanding is that historically, equipment that was bought and paid for by the individual departments prior to the ESD being formed remains titled in the name of the volunteer fire department. Since that time, I would have hoped, or hope, as Mr. Melton just mentioned, that additional equipment paid for by the ESD is titled in the ESD name. The fact that a volunteer fire department that has a lot of history behind it reaches a point where they don't want to contract with the ESD, I think that would be a very, very rare, hopefully rare and difficult situation. It has to be worked out. These are people who are well-intentioned and good-hearted and do their best, I'm sure.
Understand. Thank you. Mr. Beard?
With regards to manning the stations in case of a shutdown or contract failure, there's two ways you can go about that. You can let the other departments come in and take up the slack, or there are companies out there that you can call in to cover for emergency situation there. The titles to all equipment, since we consolidated the notes, that's where they started turning around. We sucked all of those names into that consolidation. There's still some out there that's actually, I think that's in the VFD's name, but there's no problem with that. We'll eventually get them. And furthermore, what this man here, this Mr. Gold has mentioned about the ownership of the fire trucks, the old fire trucks. Well, if we go out and we buy a $500,000 fire truck to replace the fire truck that they say they own, in my mind, they're not getting that fire truck until they give up title to that truck. That's the way I think it should be.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruner?
All equipment purchased with ESD2 money should be registered to the ESD and assigned to the rural fire departments. If we are purchasing a piece of equipment and turning it over to them to replace a piece of equipment, if that piece of equipment is to be auctioned off, that has been replaced, that money should go back to ESD2.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the sunshine laws that apply to all elected boards and commissions, all taxing entities. Let's talk about the open records law. I want you to answer for me if you got an open records request from a citizen, and any citizen can ask for public information. There are very, very few items that are exempted from open records. So if you got a request for a copy of a contract or an operational plan, who is responsible for fulfilling that open records request? So let me say again, if it has anything to do with taxpayer-funded operations for Emergency Services District 2, whether it's something that the board is itself spending money on, for example, expanding your building, okay, or hiring someone, or a contract that you all would let for a specific administrative duty. In that context, that would be something that you all would follow through on. If it is something that you are approving taxpayer dollars to be expended for, that goes for a fire department that is in a contractual relationship with you, if we were to send you an open records request that had to do with any of those entities that are contracted with you, who would be responsible for producing the public records that were requested? Mr. Gould.
Ultimately, the chairman of the board. A representative of the board, the chairman is the logical individual who would be responsible for answering under the Open Records Act requests of that nature. I would think there'd be very little proprietary information that the board would be hesitant, is the best word, to release under the Open Records Act. And compliance with the law is critical.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to narrow this down for everybody to get it exactly what I'm driving at. If a citizen wanted to know how many service runs a fire department made and how much it cost per run, who would be responsible for answering that information request? And I'm not, by specifying, I'm not saying what Mr. Gould said was wrong. I'm just clarifying my question. Mr. Perryman.
I would think that would come across the chief's desk. Chief Roselle is the chief right now, okay? And I wouldn't have a problem, if I'm elected, I wouldn't have a problem answering any open record request. But I doubt any of the 5 commissioners are it's not gonna come to our mailbox most likely. We might get a phone call by the concerned citizen saying, I'm interested in this. Let's use that as an example. If I get a phone call from a concerned citizen, hey, how much is it costing for a run for this X fire department? I would say you need to submit an open record request to chief, whoever the chief is. Let's use Chief Roselle since he is it now. And then I would go to Chief Roselle and say, hey, we've got an open records request. We need to present this out.
Mr. Thiessen.
I don't know what the standard operating procedure is currently, but I think obviously we being elected to office ultimately are the ones responsible for making sure that gets done. Whether it gets done through Chief Roselle or whoever the chief is, whether it gets done through us or an individual, person at that individual department, I think is irrelevant. But I think ultimately the responsibility lies in those that are elected to fulfill those duties.
Thank you. Mr. Bruner.
If elected as a board member, the chief operating officer should receive the request, or if I receive the request, I should take it to him personally. I should also follow up to make sure that the entire board is aware that the request has been fulfilled in a timely manner. And we should all strive to have that information on our website monthly as far as the number of runs and the cost and the depreciation on the equipment that was utilized. All of that should be broken down in a year in audit and available to the public.
Okay. Mr. Melton.
This got a,
Mr. Melton.
Okay. The question you asked was open records. I'm familiar with open records information. Requests should either come probably to either the president of the board, the director of operations. As you know, timely is 10 calendar days. Most routine requests should be pretty well fulfilled quickly. Some more complicated ones are going to need to be referred to the district attorney or the attorney for the district. What you asked, the information on the number of runs, that's information we get monthly from the Smith County Fire Marshal's office. The second part of your question was cost per run. That is not being collected. We do not have that information. for that.
Thank you. Mr. Deere?
Sorry about the interruption. This scenario kind of reminds me of an everybody and anybody and somebody and nobody situation. It's clear and plain that when the citizens ask you for something, these are the people that pay the bill. And somebody needs to be responsible to them. In this situation, it can't be the board, it's the president.
Okay, all right, I think I got everybody, didn't I? All right, Mr. Maynard, do you have one?
I do, I have one
Okay.
quick one. How are we on time?
You're good, we got 30 minutes.
Okay. I like to remind elected officials that the power to tax is the power to take. You set a tax rate, someone can't afford it, the end of that process is you taking their property. So with that in mind, tax rate, current tax rate for the ESD number 2, do you feel that that tax rate is adequate? Is it too much? Do you feel that it's not enough? Where would you like to see that tax rate go? Let's start with Mr. Bruner.
From everything I have learned, it's more than adequate, and especially when the last 3 debt payments are paid off, I should estimate that 5 to 5.5 cent tax rate would continue to be adequate unless there are extenuating circumstances that I'm not aware of at this time.
Mr. Deere.
The current amount is more than adequate. We could actually cut it a penny or a penny and a half the next year with no problem. We've had excesses in the budget for the past 5 years. We're ending up with like $1.5 million or $1.6 million this year surplus. But once we spend $1 million, that'll be whittled down before the end of this budget year. It's not we're trying to talk here. The 8.468, even though we advocate we've never raised taxes, when we first started off, that 8.468 raised about $4 million. Today, because of the valuation of the property, it raises 4.6 million plus. So actually, there has been a rate increase. It's just not in the tax part.
Mr. Gould. Dr. Gould. If you could repeat the question. Sure. Do you feel it's kind of a Goldilocks question? Is the tax rate too high, just right, or too low?
To answer that question most accurately, I would really need more detailed information about the budget. What I have is a copy of the macro columns in the budget, if you will, for 2014, 2015. And what I have not been privy to is the breakdown of the items that go into each column of that particular budget. Is the tax rate appropriate? If I understand right, the maximum tax rate could be 10 cents. When someone says 5.5 cents, it's a matter of how it fits with a realistic working budget, would be my response to that.
Mr. Melton.
The tax rate has remained unchanged for several years. It was at that rate prior to me coming on the board. We need a rate similar to that right now. Our monies have increased, a little over 2%. The tax rate is planned to be reduced, considered to be reduced, after we pay off that debt, which is still over $3 million. We'll tell you that we have not incurred any more debt since I've been on the board. It's been cash basis, pay as you go. But this gives an opportunity to pay for some new trucks and new equipment by cash for that. We additionally plan on buying cash 2 new fire engines very soon. We need some surplus in the budget to keep from having to borrow additional monies. Remember, our budget year ends in September. We don't get any more new money until, say, January. So there is a time that we're not collecting any revenue at all. So again, fire season's unpredictable. We do need some reserve in there.
Mr. Perryman.
I definitely would like to see the tax rate lowered. And I want to see that debt paid off. We have, as Mr. Deere referred to, a little over 1.5 million in reserves right now. We have a little over, or right at $3 million in debt. But Lindale is charging 6 cents per 100. I'd love to see it drop to that as fast as possible. And if we do fine at that level, then drop it to 5 cents per 100. I am definitely for lower taxes. And I feel like whatever you raise, they're going to spend. They're going to spend whatever's in the budget. And so if you lower the tax rate and bring in less revenues, then that's what they spend. So lowering the tax rate is a way to whittle the budget. Mr. Thiessen.
Part of any good budget is going to be cash flow analysis. I think one of the things that we're talking about here in reducing debt, we all agree in principle that's good. We all agree that it requires money to do that. We're talking about a $1.5 million surplus that we have. We're talking about buying 2 new engines with it, which will leave us a whopping $500,000 surplus that will carry over into the next year. My question and my approach would be to not only, pay cash for things we have. That's savings for things that you need, but you also need to aggressively attack the debt problem. As you lower your debt, especially good old Dave Ramsey, you do the snowball approach, the smallest one first. Every time you pay off a small debt, your cash flow increases. Every time your cash flow increases, you need less money coming in order to maintain and grow your budget. So yes, I am for lowering taxes. I think I'm not a big fan of property taxes to begin with, especially for the reasons you just iterated.
I have 2 questions, but first I just want to ask Mr. Melton one question for me. What year will the ESD be debt-free? Do we know?
In approximately 3 years, we'll be debt-free.
So all the debt...
Yeah. A little over about $1 billion a year,
so
about 3 years,
so
we'll be
that greatly
debt-free.
reduced the time to pay out all the equipment that was purchased individually when y'all consolidated the debt.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Over the past years, the ESD board has authorized through the budget process where we add more paid firefighters in the volunteer fire departments for daytime coverage. I'm sure all of y'all heard that. Every year I was there, they added 2 or 3 more, and it just keeps growing. But it appears that this continues. There will never be sufficient taxpayer dollars to meet the demand. How do you propose to manage this situation? Everybody understand? At one time, these were all volunteer fire departments. As soon as the tax entity came into existence, then the demand for coverage during the daytime, because they couldn't find volunteers. So our East Department started getting in on that. And over the years, the volunteer fire department, there is no way that there could be a county paid fire department unless this county grows exceptional measures. So how do you manage that? Because I'm sure that if I was a fire chief and I saw dollars out, you know where the pressure would come from. Because if one department got it, my department needs it also. So how would you go about managing that, Mr. Bruner?
Well, first of all, the word volunteer means a lot to me. When I volunteer, I work and give my services free of charge. I think daytime coverage is fine, but most of the fires that I have knowledge of occur late in the evening, at night, and on weekends. So you've got to rely upon the pagers calling the people out. But if we don't return monetary sanity to the budgeting process, it's kind of like police departments. If you remove religion, you can never hire enough police to protect you, because the religious people believe in doing the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Deere?
You're absolutely correct about it growing. It's growing like a creeping mission over the war zone. One of the things you can do, each department pays a bookkeeper. Each department pays chief pay. Now they're going to pay call pay, plus the regular pay, the $1 million a year for the 11 fire stations to be manned 40 hours a week. It's just gonna have to be looked at and trimmed down. I don't know exactly how to do it yet, but stopping the unnecessary spending will be a step toward it.
Dr. Rule?
Thank you. As I understand it, at the moment, there are, with ESD2, there are 33 paid firemen, firefighters, excuse me, and 300 volunteers. History of the volunteer fire department made it very difficult for excellence of coverage during the daytime. Volunteers have jobs, their response time is going to be increased, so I'm getting a feeling that the department is moving with the times, if you will, in terms of trying to get staff in place daytime for a better response time as such. Cost-wise, it has to be balanced out between the departments and based on their run numbers and the demand. I think what's not been mentioned is a growth factor. I'll get to that in my closing.
Thank you. Mr. Melton?
What we've seen, when you say a volunteer fire department, you think volunteer. Prior to creation of ESD, I mean but these guys, they have jobs, paying jobs. Once an ESD is formed, taxpayers are paying money in the district. They expect a better level of service, an adequate level of service. It's different, the standards are different now than it was prior to an ESD, existence of ESD. That's the reason creation of an ESD, that you do have adequate fire protection at all times. And it does take some money to have paid, so-called paid volunteers.
Thank you.
Demand during the daytime.
Thank you. Mr. Perryman?
That's a good question. I think that's why having candidate forums or getting other candidates is key to this kind of stuff, because everybody's going to say, oh, we don't believe in growing it, okay? That's one reason, that's one way, is to lower the tax rate after the debt's paid off. If it was lowered to match Lindell's 6 cents, or if we got to 5.5, which is what was presented to the people, you're going to have a hard time just bloating things at 5.5 cents, okay? But when you have, it's the old saying, you'll spend as much money as you got. If you're pulling it in, you'll keep growing it. And there's always going to be requests. You look at the White House and Congress, you see requests.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tyson?
I think those are all valid points that have been raised. I have a business. Each year that my businesses grow, my payroll goes up. My payroll goes up as dictated by demand. I think as our city grows and as we do, as our county grows, that of course there's going to be an uptick in everything. I think what is key is measuring everything. I think what is key is studying other successful programs. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like Lindell runs a pretty tight ship. So I think it would be well worth our time to look into how they're doing it. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to find a system that works and implement it here. That all being said, we can't do that unless we're objectively measuring everything that we're doing. And once we're doing that, we're going to be able to say, okay, based off of our budget, we can afford X, and we need Y, and then we just need to figure out where those two paths cross. We pay down the debt, we increase our cash flow, we're going to increase our ability to staff people for the equipment we have, new or used. It doesn't matter, you need people to operate your fire department.
Okay, let's talk about volunteerism. I want you all to think about what you could do, what the district could do overall, and what you could do as individual commissioners to encourage greater volunteerism in ESD2 for that fire protection. So think about things that have been important to you as a volunteer, and just human nature, and describe for us what you would do. I think we'll start with Robert Deere.
Hit right between the eyes on that one, didn't he? Well, it's kind of a complicated situation, and I'll tell you why. Because this hands-off policy that the ESD board has practiced since 2007, which basically means that each individual fire chief, they handle their operations. And they don't really want us putting our hands into their operation. So it'd be kind of hard It's not impossible. You could line up volunteers, you could put them on a list, and you could recruit. And then, as they were needed, you could respond to them. You might have a place like the stations that you don't use, you could put them there and have them respond from there as a volunteer. But I think volunteerism is slowly going by the wayside, in my opinion. I can't measure it because I don't know how many volunteers actually show up at a fire. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perryman?
It seems like since ESD was created, that there is more reliance on for lack of a better term, the paid volunteer. Well, not a traditional firefighter, but a paid volunteer. The volunteer fire departments, when ESD was created, had a lot of equipment needs, but there's been $24 million spent on various needs. And so, I think moving forward, I think that's one reason we can afford to lower the tax rate, is because a lot of needs have been met. And we're decently close to being able to get the debt paid off, and then we can run a tight ship like Lindale does.
Mr. Bruner, how would you go about encouraging volunteerism?
Well, volunteerism is one of the toughest questions, but my experience in education says education and then recognition, competition. A lot of these city full-time fire departments have competitions to where they compete. The volunteer fire departments could arrange and have some of their own competition and training and recruit from the high schools by going out and issuing a challenge to more of the young people to get involved and serve. But then maybe once a year, let's arrange an awards banquet and recognize those volunteers, those departments that have provided the greatest service and the greatest improvement in service for the year.
Thank you. Mr. Thiessen?
I think Mr. Bruner has some excellent points. Those are very creative ideas. I think that's a very true statement about what gets rewarded gets repeated, and I liked his ideas about that. The other part goes hand in hand with kind of everything else, is that a lot of people just don't know. I mean, they hear about volunteer fire department, but it's always those guys that volunteer. So a lot of it just has to come from board members just being part of their community in general, being part of the church. I would say in more than just every 2 years having candidate forums, maybe having reports that are issued, or people that come and speak at Grassroots America and things like that, among other things, and just being active in the community. Another way, honestly, Facebook. I mean, a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of young people that grew up wanting to be policemen and firefighters. And to add to what he's saying, we could have those same contests and things like that that are done at the schools using students that want to do it.
Mr. Melton?
To increase volunteerism, first you need to show some respect to these firefighters that are out here, obviously volunteers, not paid. Previous boards have not shown respect to the chiefs or the officers. First you show respect, you expect professionalism from the department, from the chiefs. You also provide them opportunities for training, to give them certifications for various firefighting things. Showing respect from us as board members is very important to encourage volunteerism, increase volunteerism in their community. That they are the pride, these public service. Show them respect.
Mr. Gold?
I think there are some volunteers out there who are interested and talented, and the way to attract them is to shine a spotlight on the outstanding volunteers that we have now. I sat and listened to a fire chief, volunteer fire department in my district, discuss his service over 20-some years, his father's service to the department, and his grandfather's founding of the department in 1955. That was outstanding and really impressed me a lot. Highlighting a person like that and others like him, I think will attract young people into volunteering and becoming more interested in the work in the field.
That's good. Thank you so much. I think now that it's time for the closing statements. So we're going to start with place. How did we do this? I think we're going to start. What do we need to do? Start with Mr. Teeson. All right, sounds good, and we'll go then.
Maybe 1 minute, correct?
Yes, 1 minute, and they can use that to close the deal. Any way you think is right.
I'd just like to reiterate all these issues that we've discussed tonight. They all come back from a general premise of needing to be able to problem solve, needing to be able to use foresight, needing to respond logistically, needing to evaluate, needing to use judgment, and needing to make decisions that won't always be easy, and won't always be liked by everybody. In a nutshell, I've been doing that for 7 years now. I've enjoyed doing it. It's fun for me. I enjoy the challenge. I've worked hard to have this business to where I can have some time to be with my family. And part of my responsibility to my family is taking care of what's going on in our community. And that's why I'm running for this position, because I'd like to take an active role in what happens in Smith County. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to do so.
Well, I'd like to ask for your vote in the November election. And like I said in the opening remarks, I just want to be a wise steward of taxpayer dollars. And that's the number one thing I'm going to think about when I'm presented with a budget request. Okay, there are needs and there are wants. If it's a need, that's fine. If it's a want, we look at the budget, and there needs to be no debt before we go to wants. I want to see us to enter a legal agreement with any other county we're providing fire service to. We should not be on the hook for other counties' bills. I want to remind you, we spent $425,000. We only received $55,000. That's bad management. Thank you.
If you know me, you know that I have traditional values of faith, family, and public service. I'm a very conservative person, an independent voice. Very proud to serve with my fellow commissioners on the board right now, Mr. Chadwick, Mr. Youngblood, Mr. Belafont, and even Mr. Deere over here. Proud to serve in 2 years. Tax rate has remained unchanged. I pledge to keep it remained unchanged. I also will tell you, if elected, I pledge to you to bring the financing of our district back to this Smith County. 3 years ago, prior board voted to take our funding, refinance the loan into another county. I pledge to you to bring that money back into the citizens of Smith County for their use. I brought civility to the board, brought some sanity back to the board in their meetings. I pledge to you to provide the best possible service that we can at the best possible prices. And I would appreciate voting with your support.
I didn't get a chance in my opening to mention that I developed an interest in the late 90s in business, the business side of healthcare. And in addition to my medical involvement for that many years, I also have a master's degree in business administration from the University of Houston, Clear Lake. So I understand business, I understand financials, I understand budget, and I'd like to represent the voters of my district, taxpayers of my district more accurately in this position. I'm prepared to dedicate whatever time and energies are needed to do a good job. The other issue, if I may, is planning for growth. As Smith County is growing exponentially, it's a very desirable county to move to from other areas of Texas and even other states. And what must be done is look at the big picture and plan for expansion of needed fire services and medical call services in our county. Thank you.
I'd like to close by saying This respect is a two-way street. And you should respect the citizens that you serve. And allowing them to be built out of $400,000 or $500,000 is not respect. And I would like to know, I know we don't have time here, I'd like to know what these charges of disrespect are at a later date. I believe in informing the public, that's why I created a webpage. I plan on posting things on there monthly after it gets stabilized and everybody gets to read it. We've touched on a lot of things here tonight. And one of them is the labor and the excess spending. So the public needs to contact the board members. Do you want to pay another $1 million or $2 million to man other fire stations or not? Unless you speak to us, we're going to basically the board do what it wants to. So we want to hear from you. Thank you.
I'm running primarily because I believe in a quote by Plato that the price of apathy toward public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. Maybe not evil men, but men that are willing to continue to spend beyond the taxpayer's ability. And I know in my area, we feel like we're taxed enough already, and we feel like that the fire service afforded in this area, and I've got some friends over close to the Great County line that are rural. They feel like they haven't really received any additional benefits from what they received prior to the fire district or ESC being created. So I pledge to serve you and want to hear from you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here tonight. We appreciate everybody that runs for office, because once you run for office, your time is really not your own anymore, and you live in a fishbowl. And I would like to remind everybody what our sheriff says, that whenever you are an elected official, you and those who work for you live in a 360-degree fishbowl, because the people who pay the freight are the people who have the right to ask you questions. So we appreciate you very much being here tonight. There was a lot of thought put into all of the answers to the questions. I believe that all of you gave earnest answers in what you did. So we appreciate you being here tonight. We appreciate the people who attended. I'd like to thank Roy Maynard from the Tyler Morning Telegraph for being here, and my colleague Ernie Clark. So thank you again so very much for being here tonight.
Before you all depart, I personally want to thank you. They were tough questions. I really appreciate the answers. I think I was better informed tonight by your answers, and I know the people in the audience know that. As we close for you in the audience, if you were not here last Friday, we had a gentleman here by the name of Dennis Michael Lynch. I know most of you